would only go to countries that recognize Palestinian sovereignty. In Segal, the president gave French military bases 90 days to vacate. Each decision was framed as economic sovereignty or diplomatic independence. But everyone knew the truth. Africa was done asking permission to be free. Now, let me speak to the heart of the matter. Why did they want me to apologize in the first place? Because apologies are performative chains. They don't just seek regret, they demand submission. And they needed the world to see Africa bowing again. But I refused. Not because I'm perfect, not because I enjoy conflict, but because our silence has cost us too much. We were silent when they drew borders with rulers. We were silent when they stole our children. We were silent when they funded wars, poisoned our rivers, and called it progress. But we are silent no more. The day I returned to Ouagadougou from New York, something beautiful happened. As my plane descended, I could see thousands of people lining the road from the airport to the capital. Not protesters, not angry crowds, just people, families, children, elders. They held signs, but not political ones. Signs that read, "Welcome home, and we are proud. And you spoke for us." When my motorcade stopped at Revolution Square, an old man approached my car. He was probably 80 years old, walking with a cane carved from local wood. My security wanted to stop him, but I signaled them to let him through. He tapped on my window. I rolled it down and he leaned close. "Young man," he said in our local language, "I fought for independence in 1960. Today you made that fight worthwhile." Then he pressed something into my hand, a small piece of fabric. Burkina Faso's first flag, the one they raised when we gained independence 65 years ago. "Keep this," he said, "so you never forget that freedom isn't a gift. It's a choice you make every day." That night, alone in the presidential palace, I spread that flag across my desk and I understood something profound. That speech at the UN wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of an Africa that refuses to apologize for its excellence. An Africa that won't beg for what it can build. An Africa that knows the difference between diplomacy and subservience. 6 months later, I received an invitation that made me smile. The African Union wanted me to address their annual summit. The theme, New African Leadership for a New Century. As I prepared those remarks, I thought about that grandmother who said she was proud to be Burke Bay, about that young woman in New York who ran beside my car, about that old freedom fighter who gave me his flag, and I realized something. They didn't just want me to speak for them, they wanted me to show them how to speak for themselves. So, this is my message to the world, and to every African leader still hiding behind diplomatic curtains. Don't you dare apologize for defending your people. Don't you dare water down your voice to make oppressors comfortable. Don't you dare trade truth for treaties. History remembers the bold, and history will remember this moment. Not as the day Traore apologized to the UN, but as the day Africa stood tall and refused to kneel. Because when you represent people who have been silenced for 400 years, your voice becomes their voice. When you refuse to bow, you teach them to stand. When you choose dignity over comfort, you show them that dignity is always an option. That UN speech wasn't about me. It was about us. All of us who were told to be grateful for crumbs. All of us who were told to apologize for existing. All of us who chose to remember that we are not less. We are simply less represented. And now we are represented loudly, proudly. If you believe Africa deserves to speak without permission, if you're tired of foreign scripts written for our mouths, if you know we are not less, but simply less represented, then remember this moment. Remember the day we said no to their apology. Remember the day we chose ourselves. Because the next time they try to silence one of us, they'll hear the voices of millions behind him. No apology, no surrender, just Africa risen. But let me tell you what happened. After that speech that the media never reported, what happened in the weeks that followed, that changed everything, because the story didn't end when I walked off that UN podium. It began 2 days after returning to Ouagadougou. I was in my office reviewing agricultural reports when my chief of staff burst in. "Mr. President, you need to see this immediately." She handed me a tablet showing social media feeds from across Africa. Videos were going viral, not of my UN speech. Those had already been watched millions of times, but videos of ordinary Africans doing something unprecedented, standing up. In Nigeria, a market trader named Amina had recorded herself confronting a French businessman trying to negotiate below market prices for her goods. "You heard President Traore," she said in the video. "We don't beg anymore." The video had 2.3 million views. In Ghana, university students had surrounded the campus headquarters of an American mining company, demanding they reveal their actual profit margins versus what they paid in local taxes. They live-streamed the entire confrontation, 4.1 million views. In Kenya, farmers had collectively refused to sell their coffee to European exporters at the prices they'd accepted for decades. "Find new suppliers," their spokesperson said to the cameras. "We know what our beans are worth." 5.8 million views. But the video that stopped me cold was from South Africa. A young girl, maybe 16 years old, standing outside the gates of a former apartheid museum. She spoke directly into her phone camera. My grandmother told me that during apartheid, they made our people apologize for existing. They made them carry passes to walk in their own country. They made them say sorry for being black. Her voice was steady, determined. President Traore showed us we don't have to apologize anymore. Not for being African, not for demanding respect, not for knowing our worth. She paused, looking directly into the camera. So, I'm not apologizing for wanting my country to belong to me. I'm not apologizing for refusing to be grateful for crumbs, and I'm not apologizing for being proud of who I am. The video ended with her walking through those museum gates. 13.7 million.
Lovely viewers, welcome to AMF4 TV. My name is Richard Che. I hope you are fine. Okay, we are talking about how African leaders has to be united by this an influential leader, Burkina Faso President Ibrahim Traore. There is a video on social media, especially on our handles, that we have to share it to you for you people to comment on it, on how statements he has been making all these days. We'll keep on updating you on this issue, but don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more of this video as well as similar videos like this. Let's listen to whatever he said and on social media to see, and then also don't forget to comment when you watch this video. Kindly also not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share this video for people to also watch and like us.
Million views in 48 hours. That's when I realized what was happening. That UN speech hadn't just been a political statement. It had been a psychological breakthrough. For generations, Africans had been conditioned to apologize for taking up space, to apologize for demanding fair treatment, to apologize for refusing to be grateful for scraps from the master's table. But in one moment, in front of the entire world, I had said, no more apologies. And suddenly, millions of people remembered they had been waiting their entire lives for permission to stop apologizing. Permission I had just given them. 3 weeks later, something happened that the Western press tried desperately to ignore. African governments began receiving unprecedented levels of citizen engagement. Not protests, not complaints, participation. In Senegal, thousands of young people applied to join the civil service. In Tanzania, diaspora Africans began returning home to start businesses. In Ethiopia, universities reported record enrollment in engineering and technology programs. In Botswana, agricultural cooperatives saw membership increase by 340%. People weren't just inspired by defiance. They were inspired by possibility. The possibility that they could build something without asking for permission, that they could create value without Western validation, that they could solve their own problems with their own resources. But perhaps the most significant change happened in our own country. 6 months after the UN speech, Burkina Faso achieved something unprecedented in modern African history: complete food security, not through foreign aid, not through development. Programs managed by European NOS, through Burkinabe farmers, using Burkinabe knowledge on Burkinabe land. The agricultural techniques our ancestors had perfected over centuries, techniques that Western experts had dismissed as primitive, turned out to be perfectly adapted to our climate and soil. When we stopped listening to outsiders telling us how to farm our own land, our harvests doubled. When we stopped importing seeds designed for European climates, our crops became more resilient. When we stopped apologizing for our traditional methods, we discovered they were better than anything the World Bank had recommended. The symbolism was intentional. The same country whose president refused to apologize to the UN was now feeding itself without UN assistance. By the 1-year anniversary of that speech, the transformation was undeniable. 17 African countries had renegotiated their resource extraction agreements. 23 had established sovereign wealth funds to capture more value from their natural resources. 31 had launched indigenous technology initiatives, and 42 had signed bilateral agreements with each other, creating intra-African trade relationships that bypassed Western intermediaries. The African Continental Free Trade Area, which had been stalled for years, suddenly accelerated implementation, not because of government negotiations, but because millions of ordinary Africans were demanding it. They had heard their president refuse to apologize for African excellence, and they decided they wanted to experience that excellence for themselves. But here's what really kept Western strategists awake at night. The The psychological shift was spreading beyond Africa. Indigenous communities in the Americas began citing my UN speech in their land rights campaigns. Aboriginal activists in Australia referenced it in their sovereignty movements. Pacific Island nations dealing with climate change and colonial legacies started using similar language in international forums. The refusal to apologize was becoming a global phenomenon, and it was all traced back to one moment. One African president who decided that dignity was not negotiable. The apology they wanted will never come, because Africa has nothing to apologize for. We never did.
Lovely viewers, welcome to AMN4 TV. My name is Richard Che. I hope you are fine. Okay, we are talking about how African leaders has to be united by this an influencer leader, Burkina Faso President Ibrahim Traore. There is a video on social media, especially on our handles, that we have to share it to you for you people to comment on it, on how statements he has been making all these days. We'll keep on updating you on this issue, but don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more of this video as well as similar videos like this. Let's listen to whatever he said and on social media to see, and then also don't forget to comment when you watch this video. Kindly also not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share this video for people to also watch and like as well.